want to give you a 5-minute history of Oceanside because we're celebrating 60 years here at the church. And I guess it could be more or less depending on how you read the history and kind of answer the deep philosophical, theological, dare we say, metaphysical question of what makes a church. God only knows, but...
A group of people started meeting here informally in the late 50s, and by 1961, there were consistent gatherings. Then in 1965, there was an official organizational meeting where a board of deacons were voted in. So we kind of split the difference between those dates and ended up at 1963, and that's also the time when the church started having an official list of members. You received a brief history handout this morning, and it's also on our website. We don't have a ton of records or photos that we're aware of before 2000, except here's the old downtown sign of that building for sale. You can see that, that's pretty cool. So we can't say too much, but we have been able to piece together a list of pastors from 1964 to the present. And of course, Jim and Elaine are with us today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool to see that list up there in all the years. But we do have more pictures and documentation of the last 25 years or so. And this property that we're on today, it has a fascinating history to it. It was bird world for a long time. And there's a photo of one of the remaining pieces. We've kind of kept it as a tribute to the past, although we eliminated the birds and jungle theme a few years ago. And then towards the end, it was an indoor golf place, Mulligan's Indoor Golf. And it was also a used appliance, I don't know if I want to say store or center or junkyard or something that was there. And there's what the back lot looked like when they moved in. That's all the stuff that was there. And so some of those pictures are really barely recognizable as our property as it is today. And so the church took on, a pretty big mess, and that would end up taking them really 5 or 6 years to kind of get off the ground. But here's some photos from the year 2000. This is them kind of completely gutting the building and the bird world, all the stuff and colors and buildings. And then they started meeting in the building in January 2001 in what is now our multi-purpose room or kids room. So there is the grand opening on that day in 2001. And so you can see that sound booth that you might be familiar with there. The room's kind of facing a different way. And the church also went to work on making the outside kind of look a little bit like a church, or at least not a used appliance store, although you can still see the used appliances. Must have had trouble getting rid of those. And then they eventually got to work on this room, on the sanctuary. And so this is what that looked like, again, kind of gutting it out and then building some of the walls that are back there. And then they moved in in February 2005, they met in this room for the first time. And there's a picture of it, and there's Jim in the corner preaching there. And so that's one of the first early days in this sanctuary.
And you'll notice that's not quite what it looks like now. We have a bit more of a different setup, so it was kind of on the diagonal over here. Then we changed it, and there was a lot of work done by a lot of great people to bring this platform towards the center. But a few years after moving into this room in 2005, the church went through some really tough times for different reasons, from 2007 to 2015, and really dwindled. But some really courageous people with Jesus-centered hearts and with a heart for outreach never gave up on what they believed about this church. And most importantly, of course, God never gave up. And it was our privilege to come and help revitalize the church in 2015. So you'll see up here, this is actually, I love this picture. This is Amos's dedication. This is our second son. He's 8 now, shortly after we arrived. So this is our interim pastor here, Dave Monk, he and Marilyn were really a blessing to us as we moved here and got started, and they continued their work in the church as we were here as well.
Yeah, man, we're looking young and good there. It's good.
My sister's there too. That's pretty cool.
And those first few years were really tough for sure. We hovered in the 30s in attendance many Sundays, and there were no kids but ours for the first few years. And in some of the darker times, I honestly wasn't sure if the church was going to make it. But the church was willing to do two, maybe really three things. That was pray hard, they're willing to work hard, and willing to take some risks. And that's what we did, believing that God was going to do something big and expand the reach of this church and make it a center on the island for transformation in people's lives.